Okay, hi everyone. This is part 2 of the video that I just made, and thankfully I didn't procrastinate too bad, making myself sit my ass down and do this because I've procrastinated long enough. Okay, so this is part 2 of, I just talked about overcoming my fear of guns, which I think is very interesting. And I think this video is going to be just as interesting to retell it because I only wrote like a really small article on my blog about it. And so I'm going to share it with you today, and I'm going to try to talk really slow because there's a lot of little information in between that I want to give you, little bits and pieces of basically what led me to not only assisting in self-defense instruction, but also just now teaching some workshops in this. Okay, so specifically, I've talked about that I trained in Krav Maga, the badass Israeli self-defense system that teaches you 300 different techniques, like a lot of other systems that you may not even use many of them at all. It's just to beat ass, okay, people, and the mindset. So I'm going to speed it up to right now. Okay, so I just talked about overcoming fear of guns. So growing up, again, hopefully you listened to that video, I said about feeling helpless, never had been in a fight before, was always very fearful if, I should come in contact with a criminal or anybody out there that's trying to hurt me, or even with actually homeless people or anybody approaching me. I always felt uncomfortable because many different reasons. Not having social skills is one of them. Okay, so learning self-defense, how I came about that, which taught me so much, including not only physical skills, but emotional, spiritual, and mental self-protection and defense. Okay, so I had always been, wanting to learn, and basically I had an incident with a family member that I won't disclose. It was a male. He was about 6'2", who kind of got in my face in kind of a way enough to give me basically a mild, or my first ever panic attack. And so we are looking at, this is about around the age of 35. Okay, so after that experience that in a way, if you want to say traumatized me or just wrecked me, in the sense of, after I had had the conversation with him, because just his tone and everything, I tried to run away, drive away, and couldn't control my emotions. There's no breathing, there's no anything. I was just in another place. And while he didn't exactly apologize or say that it never happen again, I was able to calm myself down enough to leave. Okay, so the next morning, why I know this is a big deal for me is that I said to myself, I'm not a dumb bitch. Why didn't I just tell him to stop? And after that happened, and why this is a big deal in my life, since I have never been taught anything about how to deal with conflict or do anything, I avoid, like a lot of us who haven't been shown how to deal with it. So I knew this was a big deal to me because I was not going to family events and functions, and that's a really big deal. Usually I will just repress and suppress, and I will just go to these things. So I knew that something was changing me inside. So for about a year, I went to heavy meditation inside of myself. Every day I committed to it, speaking to myself. I don't even know what I was thinking at the time, other than I knew that I was changing. And like I said, I did not stand up for myself. And so I didn't talk to the family member and that part of the family for about a year. So about 6 months later, somebody brought up somebody that was teaching self-defense, specifically Krav Maga. I had never heard of it. And there were some incidents that were happening in the building that I was working in. There was actually a holdup next door in a salon. It was a business complex, and she was held up at gunpoint, and I hope she's doing okay because she did suffer some PTSD. But sometimes we'd have her door locked, sometimes we wouldn't. So there was definitely a reason to learn self-defense in that situation. But anyway, I don't know exactly the timing of exactly when that was happening. But okay, so I get the postcard and I call this person, and he starts telling me about this kick-ass Krav Maga, which I didn't know anything about. Okay, so going into this, so since I just told you, never dealt with conflict and all these sorts of things, feeling helpless, wanting to have to teach my daughter. We wanted to get her into self-defense at some point, but this is still going into all of this portion right here. Okay, so everything that I learned there that I'm not going to get into this video here is that we did a lot of drills. We did a lot of things with multiple attackers that really pushed me to basically survive and thrive. You know, you got to get out of situations. And those of you who have trained before in different styles probably know about this. But for me, it was brand new because I was so intimidated by just anybody in the class. And that's when I kind of, in each different type of drill or positioning that we did, it did something psychologically to me. And basically I developed this I can and I will attitude, as well as they're strong, but I'm strong too. And so we would do knife drills, we would do gun defense drills. I mentioned in the last video about disarming people and getting really more comfortable with basically getting hurt. So this is interesting again, because all this self-defense, the pain, the bruises, the everything that I went through, which was kind of like a sick, fun addiction, actually prepared me to finally get on a skateboard, which I had been wanting to do like for 14, 15 years, but didn't want to fall. Who wants to fall, right? So all of this actually prepared me to actually learn to just even get on one. I'd always wanted to get on one and appreciated that whole mindset. So as I was learning all of these different things, trying to make the story shorter, is that I feel like I learned it opposite. I learned the physical now that I felt empowered and strong there, but I didn't have words, because I was like, okay, now I can do this, but I don't really feel like I could say anything to anybody stranger-wise, right? When people would approach or if something happened, I'm not gonna talk like that, like you would see in self-defense classes, like back off or stay away from me. So then I started researching online, and I found one of the greatest mentors to me, because he taught me so much, and I'm going to plug his name here. His name's Richard Grannon, and he actually specializes in narcissistic abuse. But that then set me on down the road of learning verbals, which can sound really funny and ridiculous, and you feel like a performer clown in your teachings. But I loved the way that he taught, because he not only came from martial arts background, but also he was a bouncer and all of these other things. Okay, Spartan Life Coach. So he had a series called Street Fight Secrets, and you can still access some of his stuff. So that transformed my life as well. And so I kind of think I learned it backwards. I learned physical, then I learned verbal. As I was learning verbal, I was also learning compassionate ways to speak in being assertive. So I was learning about assertiveness, boundary setting, what the hell that is, didn't know anything about it. Again, dealing with conflict, I was always avoiding. A lot of us have been taught this. But again, you have to feel like you have rights, and that's a huge component of boundary setting and just feeling your worth. Okay, so then I was teaching myself that again about that time, and understanding that I was actually a people pleaser growing up, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in creating the mindset, and I learned how to compassionately assert myself. So I learned phrases like, if I'm dealing with somebody out there on the street, situational, somebody I don't know, criminal or not, stranger, homeless person, whoever it is, that I can feel stronger speaking these words in a compassionate way and not sounding like a bitch. Because yes, I was worried about sounding like a bitch to everybody and not worrying about my safety. Also, let's put in there that I would be the person who answers the door just because somebody rings it, or just because it knocks, or just because somebody calls, I have to pick it up. So I never really understood those people that had the balls and the guts to, basically not do those things, not feel obligated to go to a party, not feel obligated to answer the door, pick up the phone. But I didn't know how to be like that. So these phrases that I learned that are not my own, they just fit me, and I just loved it. Just made me feel powerful to know that I could talk like that. Whether it was, I can hear you from there, that's close enough, I need you to take a walk, I need you to blah, 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 and all these things that ended up can be utilized in daily living, including parenting. But those people like me did not know anything about this terminology like boundary setting, let alone ever feeling like I had rights, because of the authoritarian structure of parenting. So, and that was my dad. I looked at my dad and other authority as wherever you want to say, teachers, law enforcement, whatever it is, authority figures. Okay, so now, so this is kind of like what I do in some of the workshops, is that how I've been able to assess opening up dialogue and conversation for everyday living, as well as those who maybe want to compete in martial arts or whatever it is in life. First responders, you have to be able to assert yourself in situations sometimes too, just depending on, what situation you're in. This is also the example that I give, whether it's a sexual harassment or feeling uncomfortable, or maybe adult and child feeling the uncomfortability with them, is simply opening up the discussion for and regarding personal space. So I know this was a lot of information. I didn't want to make this an instructional video on basically all the steps of compassionate assertiveness, boundary setting, and all of that, because I have a whole thing that I go through in one of my videos and one of my other programs. But I just wanted to share with you that these are the things that self-defense did for me in creating the mindset, what I learned, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically. I am not the only person that has learned it in this way and reaped all the benefits, but maybe my personal insight into how I view it, maybe that gives just a different perspective on how I look at it, and the moves. There were lots of different moves that I can talk about. What they did specifically, bear hug specifically, and then also there's a drill on the ground that we did to get a knife away from somebody. But all of you can look that up, all the different Krav Maga sorts of styles. So it's Krav Maga, KRAVMAGA. And I do think it's going to be the next sensation, aside from the fitness part of it, that hopefully one day we will have more civilian training like that. But I'm going to go ahead and end this video now. Just I wanted to share that with you, and that of course I encourage it for in general mindset training as part of all of the things I talk about, because there really is a difference between self-worth and confidence. Okay, so I finally have been able to describe it these past couple years in my life, that I would have said I was confident in certain areas of my life and my abilities, but I definitely had a low sense of self-worth and did not feel I was worthy of protecting myself or defending myself or anything on that level, because my mind wasn't there. It's just, there's a difference between knowing and respecting yourself, like from a knowing part, but then there's actually a feeling, which I talk about as well, is that there's two different things. And yes, I learned that the worth and the rights and the everything, it's all connected, and that does affect how we walk through life. So if you have any questions or anything else, I would just like to finish off by saying, yes, I most definitely, in part of anybody's coaching program, that yes, a minimum of 3 to 6 months training, 6 months at its best. 3 months you're feeling good, 6 months you're really feeling good and more confident. But as a part of my mental readiness coaching, it's almost essential. And just go to it when you can, because yes, everybody has schedules, but you're doing a good thing even if you can get there 1 day a week. So I'm glad to see that it's out there and being incorporated, especially in law enforcement with jiu-jitsu. And but Krav Maga basics are more realistic than a lot of other styles out there they're great. You will hear all of us talk about all the systems are great, but there's certain things that are not taught for the ring, because you can't be elbow striking and groin kicking people in the ring or on the mats. So I hope that many of you find a system that you like and enjoy, because it will change your life, and you kind of don't really know what it really can do for you. But if you are a person like me, people pleaser, not really understanding even what I'm talking about is feeling that I have rights, and you know, just feeling like for so long you don't really have a right to live the life that you want. Even though I wanted to, it took a very long time for me to feel like that within myself. Okay, so thanks for tuning into this video, and I'll see you next time.